Hello Sparkbomb. I thought it would be fun to do a video reflection on Werewolf Mansionwolf 2 Duality. Going into the game, I've been having a really fun time reviewing all of the old roles and powers while working on SparkWiki, and so I was really interested in the Cupid role for one, and I wanted to include an OMT Cupid. It seemed like a fun twist on the usual serial killer type by being able to, have to manipulate voting to get extra kills in, and also to be able to just kind of randomly get lucky. I also was really excited about the idea of different kinds of masonries, and so I specifically wanted to do a 3-player masonry with one of them being a werewolf. I was really excited going into All-Stars, getting the Spellmaker role, because just there's so many possibilities with masonries. And so I ended up also deciding on the 2 pairs of werewolves, both existing but starting separately. And this was kind of the idea that started off Mansionwolf 2, was that I had my 5 werewolves, I've got my Cupid, I've got my 2 masons, I've got just an 8-player foundation, or an 8-role foundation right there. And so once I finally realized that I was doing like the pair-based things, I was really uncertain about the plain innocent, or about the power roles in the game. I knew that I wanted plain innocence, I knew that I wanted to do something special with plain innocence. I also, of course, needed to have a few innocent roles. And so I split up the Dreamer into 2 roles, I split the Protector into 2 roles, and then I ended up having both the Vigilante and the Necromancer as 2 roles, which I thought worked together. And the variations on each one. With the Dreamers, I ended up having the Odd Night Dreamer be Plain Innocence, and the Even Night Dreamer be Werewolves. The Even Night Dreamer, of course, was slightly less likely to survive, slightly less likely to survive to use his power. And so I felt like giving the stronger power to the slower role made more sense. And by contrast, I ended up deciding with the Protectors to give the Crescent Protector the full protect, and the Gibbous Protector the, I guess it'd be a list manipulation protect. The way the second Protector worked was that they'd protect a player, and if that player was targeted for a kill, it would skip down to the next person on the kill list. I specifically wanted to keep tempo up high on this game, especially coming out of All-Stars. It seemed like, with all the execution stops, with all the night protects, etc., having just a high body count game, having very limited number of protections would be the way to go. I also had the Vigilante and the Necromancer be that sort of balance there. I liked the idea of a life and death balance. And I also, of course, I didn't want players solving the game and figuring out that the pairs went together, and I knew it was going to be to some degree really obvious with the Even and Odd Nights players. And so with the Necromancer, I decided to specifically switch it to be after the Necromancer dies, he can resurrect someone power, which it's not a power I'm fond of. NPM pointed it out in the thread at one point, but it's what I ended up just throwing in the 36 hours I had to finish prepping the game. Trash came to me, I think, last Wednesday morning, and was like, hey Rift, I'm going out of town in a week, and I don't think my game will end before then. And so, since I already had a game partially put together, I knew people were already waiting, I decided to jump in and throw things together. So, other mechanics that I didn't mention in that mess really quick. The Masonry. The Masonry was a huge mechanic that I was hoping would go off better than it did. The 3 Masons had the option, starting night 2, to attempt to convert someone. They could convert Plain Innocence or Werewolves. They were specifically told that they would be able to convert either. But they had to have a majority vote among the 3 of them in order to convert someone. If they attempted to convert a power role, or if they attempted to convert the Cupid, the conversion would simply fail, and they could attempt it again the next night. I thought going into the game that the Masons would attempt to convert regardless in order to get information. The Masons, of course, also were warned that there was a chance one of them was a werewolf, but it wasn't meant to be a guarantee. There were a lot of things in this game I wanted there to be a certain amount of doubt about. I also included in both the Dreamer and the Protector roles a mention that your power may not work as described, which was kind of, in some ways, can be a catch-all for like disables and manipulation and stuff, but specifically it was meant to be a warning of the fact that the Masonry actually protected werewolves from being dreamed successfully. Going into the game, I was so worried that day 1, I was thinking to myself, if I was a Mason in this game, what would I do? What would be my strategy? And Rex and I had a back and forth discussion about this, because as an MC, while you're designing a game, you see the game as open setup. The players who play the game will see the game as closed setup if it is closed setup, but while you're designing it, you're seeing it as open setup. So I know everything that's going on, and so maybe that colored my judgment a bit. But I was just sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I would assume that one of my fellow Masons is a baddie, is a werewolf. I wouldn't necessarily assume they had the night kill, but I would assume that they, well, I would assume the team was linked, but I would assume that one of them is a werewolf. I would assume that if another Mason dies innocent, not necessarily that I would out the other Mason, but that I would say, hey, if I die, this person is probably evil. And so I always expected, one, I didn't expect the werewolves to go after the Masons so quickly. Two, I didn't expect the Masons not to use their power at all. I felt like getting more information was always the right call, and the Masons didn't know that the werewolves who were in the Masonry would be dream protected, which was something I put in specifically because I thought, you know, if the Masons claim day one, which seems like the right play to me, you know, they just get dreamed, they get the werewolf killed off, and it's not entirely fair to the werewolf who started off in the Masonry, especially because he's working alone. And so I put in the caveat that if, you know, the plain innocent dreamer dreamt anyone in the Masonry, they would be dreamt as a plain innocent. And also the werewolf dreamer, if he dreamt anyone in the Masonry, they would be dreamt as not a werewolf. It wasn't something I announced. I did tell him, I included like a little mention of some sort of power thing in the Mason PM. I specifically told the Masonic werewolf, full moon werewolf, I'll use both terms interchangeably, bear with me on that. I specifically told the full moon werewolf that something about the Masonry gave him power, and that if he could get other werewolves into it, they would benefit from the same thing. I never specified what it was. It was a dream protect for them. It was just kind of a little extra balance in the game, because I felt like the werewolves were slightly underpowered. I thought there was a risk, because they didn't start united, that they would end up accidentally killing one of their fellow wolves, because they couldn't manipulate the vote as strongly as most baddie teams can. Whether or not it was the right call, up to you guys. I think that covers everything. The Vigilante specifically had the night kill instead of a day kill because I didn't want to have to record an extra video during the day. Simple as that, really. And also kind of a bit of the recent discussion of when should day powers happen and etc. I think that covers all mechanics. I realize that's a little bit iffy. Skipping down, looking at game events. I mean, like I said, I didn't expect. For one thing, I figured that as soon as Neopet's mom died, that Curbio would out Mr. Heatherway, and that didn't happen, and that confused me a bit. And then Mr. Heatherway was taken at face value when he claimed to be a Mason and didn't have to make that claim, and nobody questioned the Masonry for the rest of the game. And I don't know all the things that went on behind the scenes. I know that both Curbio and Blackjack are feeling a bit bad about letting their teams down. It happens, guys. It's Werewolf. Nobody, I mean. Oh, the Werewolf Union. If Mr. Heatherway attempted to night kill one of the other werewolves, if the Masonic werewolf attempted to night kill one of the other werewolves, they would unite instead, and that was indicated in the plots by the Howl joined by another Howl. And also, if one werewolf and one of the pairs went out, that one would unite specifically with the other pair. If the other pair had already united with the, I don't have a third hand, with the Masonic werewolf, it would cause a full union in the team. So night one, Mr. Heatherway attempted to kill Cynical, couldn't because Cynical was a werewolf, so they, Cynical, Inuyasha Oki, and Mr. Heatherway all united. And then later when Calariel died, Steve united back with the survivors of that team. So that's what happened there. And you know, Stratus claiming neutral was also a bit odd, I thought. I always thought it would be the stronger play for the Cupid to claim innocent. You know, it would be possible for the Cupid to say, I had to unite somebody at the start, two players at the start of the game, and just have it be vanilla Cupid and make that claim, or just not claim at all. I don't know exactly what went through Stratus' mind or why he felt the need to make that claim. I'll trust that he thought it was the right call at the time. And then Blackjack getting rezzed and then not killed was a little bit also unexpected. Just having one of the Dreamers die that early, get rezzed. Having the Necromancer die night one or day one was not expected at all either. So just the odd thing, you design a werewolf game, and everything you've designed makes sense up until like night one or night two when just everything goes out the window. Anybody who's hosted a game knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so, I mean, props to Mr. Heatherway for making the Mason bluff work, and I'm really excited. One of the things, I wanted there to be a lot of doubt in this game about who could be trusted and about how powers worked. It doesn't seem like the Dreamers or Protectors ever second-guess their powers. which was, I was hoping the Dreamers would to a degree, and unfortunately that never happened, or that one of the Masonry werewolves would get dreamt incorrectly but found out later. Yeah, the Cupid was partially a counterbalance to that. I expected the Cupid to actually manage up a solid body count, and he didn't. Possibly my bad, possibly Stratus's, possibly just the way the game went down. And I think that's almost every comment that needs to be made on how the game actually played out, whether or not I made the right calls and some of that. So my favorite, I guess my favorite part probably was actually doing these video plots instead. I'd had the idea, I think 2 months ago. It was something that just none of us had done before, and I felt like it would be cool to actually have somebody do it. And so there were a few things that went into that. One, of course, choice of attire, and specifically the hoodie. I know that a few people laughed at dress shirt, tie, hoodie. And the reason for that is, of course, the earlier videos I've made this year have been me dressed up, being professional for you guys. My Mansion first persona, on the other hand, hoodie and jeans. And so, because, one, I was presenting myself in these videos, and two, because it was also supposed to be a more Mansionverse, more like in the sight kind of thing, I figured, okay, dress shirt, tie, hoodie. And my thoughts at the start of the game was, as time goes on, I can get less formal knots and maybe like slight facial hair to just kind of express the exhaustion over time of either playing or hosting or whatever a game. I don't think anyone picked up on that exactly. Unfortunate part of that. And then the way the plots came together, and that was irritating because I had such a hard time memorizing the exact lines, both for the prologue, because I wanted to have the exact wording, and then during night one, and then carrying on night one. I also hadn't thought as much about like I haven't done public speaking in a long time, and so it feels weird to be doing this. But it seems like it did come together by about night 2 or 3 and carried through the rest of the game. Things that were supposed to be announced, of course, I always knew that I wanted to announce the 2 Howls if the werewolves united. Or maybe that was something that came out in night 1. I don't recall anymore. My notes are slightly incomplete on certain things. But I'm really glad that it was taken as a conversion instead of as a union. I realized that there was no reason to assume that the werewolves started separated, of course, and so taking it as conversion was actually probably the best way the Innocents could have assumed anything was going on. It basically is, can we trust everyone, or can we not trust everyone? I very much wanted to have an atmosphere for this game of uncertainty, and, hopefully of thought and discussion, which didn't quite pan through. I had originally hoped to make 48-hour days to allow the extra time for people to discuss and vote. Things played out the way they did. I'm also really disappointed that I haven't found the right balance for playing innocent roles either. I did the switches in Mansionwolf 1, which was a cool idea, but the switches themselves didn't have any extra fun. Same thing in this game, I think, especially because the Masonry didn't go recruiting random plain innocents or even attempting to, that the plain innocents just kind of felt powerless and like plain innocents. I'm hoping to find the right call in the future. And I think that about sums up everything. Feel free to ask questions in the thread, of course, and I will see you guys later.